Secret societies that are controlling the world. An organization called the Round Table. Now, there's a number of organizations that belong to this particular group. Here's a slide that names them. On top we have the Council on Foreign Relations, the United Nations, the Bilderberg Group, the Club of Rome, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, and they are all interplayed with each other, support and sustain each other, and this is part of the secret combinations that Moroni tried to warn us about. Lucifer is using his priesthoods to control and to govern and to gain his way. The Council on Foreign Relations is a relatively small group of people, about 2,500 people, that are very influential in industry, in finance, and most of the leaders that you vote on for presidents or for senators or whatever come from the Council of Foreign Relations. It's interesting that when President Clinton came on board here, he was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also a member of the Bilderbergers. But he brought on board with him about 385 members of the Council on Foreign Relations into very important governmental positions: Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense. All of the influential parties were associates in the Council of Foreign Relations and undoubtedly wear aprons on given occasions. The Club Bilderberg. The Bilderbergs, that's an organization, mostly heads of state, who are influential one with another to carry out slowly and methodically this movement towards a new world order. But the Club Bilderberg, those are mostly people that are maybe a little higher up on the ladder than the Council of Foreign Relations. But it's the heads of state that are working together for their goal. Now here's an interesting slide depicting the start of World War II. We just went through a depression. Now what happened in that depression? It's interesting to note that in America we were not short on workers, we were not short on industry, we were not short on need. People needed lots of things. We're not short on willing workers. What we were really short on was money. We're short on money. How come we're short on money? Well, we've explained that in our debt system, when you have a mortgage, you're going to pay that mortgage or you're going to lose your home. You're going to lose your farm. That's the last thing that you're going to let go, is not paying your mortgage. Well, what happened? The banks quit making loans to people, but people had to make payments on their mortgages, and it dried up the money in the system. And so now we have ourselves a depression. There's no money to buy things. It isn't that there are no things there to buy, it's that there's no money to buy them. So farmers were plowing under their fields. Industries went broke. Hundreds and hundreds of farms were taken over by the banks. Why? Because people could not make the payment. Why could they not make the payment? Because the banks quit making loans. Why did they quit making loans? Well, it's to their advantage at that time. They got to confiscate all of these properties from these people. Now, at the end of the 1930s, there's an interesting thing happened. Europe got involved in a war. And it looks like we're needing to go that way. And here's a slide depicting the banker. All of a sudden he's kicking loose with all kinds of money to fund the factories, the farms, the industries that are going to promote the defense of our friends in Europe that are going to fight this war. Now here's Uncle Sam saying, why? And 2 years ago you didn't have any money to lend us? But all this money's coming forward now to produce the military goods, agricultural goods, stuff needed to fight a war. We had money now to build cannons, We had money to build airplanes. We had money to build ships. And with these ships and with these airplanes and bombs, we can take them over to Europe and deliver them free of charge and destroy those people's property. And the bank made money all the way over. And here's their buildings destroyed after that war. The banks lend us the money, lend the governments the money to fight the war. And after the war is over, the people that own the property have to go to the bank and borrow enough money to rebuild them again. So banks do pretty well in a war. But the people don't do too well. Here's a picture of the field in Normandy, where we have thousands of American soldiers who got buried there as we came on board to free up that land from the German occupiers. Now, the UN. Here's the UN symbol. What does it look like? To me, it looks like a spider web. It's a spider web, and it's there to engulf the world. Here's the map of the world, kind of spread out through the thing, and we're stuck in their web. The UN building. The UN building. There's an interesting thing about the UN building. Did you know that the UN building has a chapel? There's a chapel in the UN building. Now let me tell you a little bit about the UN chapel. Who funded the chapel in the UN building? The Lucis, L-U-C-I-S, Trust runs the only religious chapel in the New York United Nations headquarters. The Temple of Understanding was originally funded by the Lucifer Trust in London in 1923. The name was changed from the Lucifer Trust to Lucis Trust to make the nature of the organization less conspicuous. Prominent fund organizations sponsored by the Lucis Trust include the Theosophical, that's what it is, the Theosophical Order of Service, the Theosophical Society, the United Nations Association and the World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace International, Greenpeace USA, Amnesty International, and the Wicca cult. Okay, so if we have a chapel in the UN building, who in the world is the foundation of it? From all of this information, it looks to me like it's Satan and his crowd. Yes, here's a picture of some of the little saints up there doing a dance or something, meditating in the UN chapel, and I don't think it has much to do with our Savior and his efforts upon this earth. Global Tyranny, Step by Step. The United Nations and the Merging New World Order. That's a book you ought to read. There's history here. There's step-by-step evidence that Lucifer is doing his thing to unite the world into one world that he controls. Here's an article in How to Achieve the New World Order by Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State. Okay, we have people in high places who this is their philosophy. A newspaper, the Milwaukee Sentinel. Gorbachev urges New World Order. Now it's interesting to note that Harry Dexter White was a member of the Communist Party when he fathered the International Monetary System. We're working for a world in the hands of Satan, a new world order. And methodically and slowly and step by step, we're seeing it come to pass. Now here's an interesting slide. Countries without a Rothschild bank. In the year 2000, it included Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Korea, North Korea, and Iran. In the year 2003, it included Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. In the year 2011, it included Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. We are fighting these nations and tearing them up until they submit to and become members of the international banking cartel. And how many of us are aware that that's actually going on? But here's history in the making. Now here's a slide, an actual 1934 Chicago Tribune political cartoon. And here is a cart running down the road with a bunch of drunkards controlling the darn thing. And they're throwing money out of that cart as fast and furious as they can. And here's a little artist alongside writing the plan. The plan, number one, spend under the guise of recovery. 2, bankrupt the government. 3, blame capitalism. 4, junk the Constitution. 5, declare a dictatorship. This is the plan to throw the world into a new world order, and do it by money and deceit.